welcome along to the Timeform Sporting Life weekend preview. And then there were two main races we're looking at, and just two people on the preview this week, Matt. We're the last men standing, but we'll concentrate on the domestic front. We'll touch on the DRF as well. But there's some decent action at Sandown on Saturday.
There's plenty of decent action, yeah. Just before the ITV cameras are rolling, we've got Chasing Fire, a Sky Bet Supreme horse as well. He could end up being one of the leading contenders from Britain in that race, the Cheltenham Festival opener. But yeah, a little later on, we do have Grade 1 action. It's the Virgin Bet Scilly Isles Novice Chase, and again, 5 runners, but you know they've all got some sort of squeak, and this is a real draw here. Gordon Elliott deciding to run Jerry Colomb in this race. Not totally surprised that he's decided against running in the Grade 1 over 2 miles 5 at the Dublin Racing Festival. I think, as he said on Get Stuck In earlier in the week, he's looking for a slightly more, a less competitive affair to just have his final run before Cheltenham.
Let's have a look at the Timeform ratings then for this Scilly Isles, and let's see if Gordon has found that slightly easier opportunity. What's that saying there, Matt? Well, clearly he's got about £9, £7 and a pig in hand of his nearest rival. Do you think he is that far in front?
I think he certainly he's the Grade 1 winner, isn't he? I know Monmoral's won a Grade 1 juvenile hurdle. He was a good promising horse, but Jerry Colomb does look, he's won his point to point. He's unbeaten. He's 6 for 6 under rules so far. He's done absolutely nothing wrong. And the way that he won his Grade 1 over Christmas, you just sort of felt that really he was only kind of waking up after the last, where he made a little bit of a mistake. That has to be said. You know, Sandown is a challenging jumping test, isn't it? Which we've seen plenty of good novices caught out around there before. But he jumps fairly solidly. I think there is still room for improvement in that department, because he made a couple of mistakes first time out at Fairy House as well. But he beat quite a nice horse there, Braun, who we saw win the beginner's chase for Daryl Jacob, brought Willie's 4,000th winner. And again, at Limerick, he beat very solid horses, and by the end, he was kind of sprinting away from them. So
we've got the replay of that Limerick race here, haven't we? And this is the most recent evidence we've got of him. This was quite a deep race, wasn't it?
Yeah, this wasn't a bad race at all, and that's the difference, isn't it, between some of these novice chases in Ireland. There is real strength in depth, so I'm sure we'll come to the Dipper at Cheltenham in a second, but this race, there was a fair bit of depth. Look, Kilcrut was in here, Authorised Art, the runner-up's adamantly chosen of Willie Mullins as well. Not a bad horse, and a horse with a bit of speed, and Jerry Colomb there, he made a bit scratchy over the second last, and coming to the last as well, he slows down, a bit fiddly, but once woken up, he really is quite well in command here on the running and going away at the line. And this is 2.5 miles, just shy at Limerick, and he was sort of to the fore throughout. It's interesting, isn't it? Because he has been given options at the Cheltenham Festival. He's been given the Grade 1 Brown advisory over 3 miles. He could still run qualifying this weekend. That third run over fences is an important one because it qualifies him for the National Hunt Chase. So I suspect they'll sit on the hands. If he gets the job done here, they'll sit on the hands and they'll wait to see how those races shape up at Cheltenham. But look, he's got a decent little test to get through first. He's only a 7-year-old. He's a budding a staying chaser. I think he's going to take a fair bit of beating here, isn't he?
Yeah, it's interesting he's coming in. The whispers were the National Hunt Chase might be his target. I think we'll learn a bit more about him anyway at Sandown on Saturday, particularly because we've got some strong British form being represented. It's from the Dipper at Cheltenham last time. The Real Whacker winning here. We've got the replay of the race. We've got in behind Matt, we've got Monmoral and Thunder Rock, who reoppose here on Saturday. What sort of chance have either of these got?
Well, that's right. Paul Nicholls is on record saying that the Real Whacker kind of had the run of the race here. Now, that's interesting. Timeform have really marked him up. They've really liked this performance from the Real Whacker, but you couldn't help but think kind of there is something in what Nicholls said there. Now, we've seen plenty of frontrunners excel around Cheltenham's new course this season, as we have in recent seasons. And some of the other horses, the beaten horses here, just were taken out of their rhythm. And I think that was particularly important when it comes to Thunder Rock, because you can see him there finishing.
That's him
really
in third
well
in the red cap.
Yeah, that's him. It's Ollie Murphy's horse, finishing well in third. And if you go back to sort of even by the water jump on the second circuit, he was on and off the bridle. He was just taken out of his rhythm. Again, it could be a Cheltenham thing, perhaps the undulations of that course not quite suiting him, but he was staying on well. Monmoral less strong at the finish. Paul Nicholls again seems to think that a strong test and a stiff finish at Sandown is going to play to his strengths. I have wondered whether Montmoral, another run here, would qualify him for handicaps. He's rated a fair bit lower already, so he's about 148. They'd have the handicap option for him maybe going forward, whether that's something dropping back for a strongly run 2 miles in something like the Grand Annual, or he might run in the Plate. We'll see about Montmoral, but he did star, didn't he, at Aintree, so perhaps they'll have a look to Liverpool a little later in the year. But I think Jerry Colombe will win this race. Thunder Rock's possibly the one that I think could give him a bit to think about if he gets his jumping together around Sandown.
I agree on that evidence of the dipper there. He was doing his best work at the finish. Well, interesting that Paul in his Betfair column said they're going to be positive on Montmoral. Do you think they'll go forward on Jerry Colombe as well? So it might set up for Thunder Rock to come and pick up the pieces late. We shall see. Let's look at one of the big betting races on the card. The Virgin Bet Heroes Handicap Hurdle. That's the name of the race. It's also a Pertemps qualifier, 2 for the price of 1 here, Matt. It's competitive. We've got Remastered in here. He's having a good season for the Pipe team.
Oh, he's a tremendous season, yeah. Really, really good. He came and won the Handicap Hurdle at Aintree, went to Newbury, finished second to Lamilos in the big the Coral Gold Cup there, and then he was winning again the other time. Last time out, he ran a remarkable race, didn't he, where he was sort of not quite whipped round at the start, but he lost a length or 2 at the start, managed to recover from that and won quite well in the end. So he's well handicapped. If he won off a higher mark over fences last time out, he's able to run off 1:42 over hurdles. Now that was the same mark that he'd finished a close-up second to Lamilos at Newbury off over fences. So he's got a really good chance. As you say, it's a Pertemps qualifier though. So if you're having a bet in this race, you just have to be slightly aware that a lot of these horses are going to want to qualify, but they're also probably high enough already when it comes to handicapping and looking at the weights. So last year's Pertemps qualifier, you were getting into that off 134, 135. So anything 140 already, I'd say knows that they're high enough. They just need to now finish in the first 4. So it is something to bear in mind when betting in these races. I think maybe the focus might be on some of those a bit further down the weights, 128, 131. Those horses are going to need to be winning or going close here to stand a chance of getting into the final at Cheltenham. I think we'll focus on a couple of them now.
We will. Let's have a look at the time form ratings for this race to sort of help us start with. They've got last year's winner Green Book is back in there, Matt. But look, time form ratings, this is very competitive, as you would expect for a race like this. We know a lot about a lot of them. So what are the potential lurkers towards the bottom that are catching your eye?
Well, interestingly, they tie in, don't they? Because at the top of the time form figures there, you've got Bells of Peterborough and Schalke. Now, they're both in good form and they're lowly weighted. They are still in the 120s, so you'd like to think that they'll be there or thereabouts in a race like this, getting plenty of weight. The ground's decent as we speak. It's interesting, isn't it? You're looking at sort of decent ground at Sandown in February, but I'd be amazed if it didn't turn into a proper test this. It just is, isn't it? It's going to be getting dark by, 3:30 round here, and it's just that sort of Sandown ground. I think on the official going description they've said it's riding largely dead, so I'd expect it to be a test, despite the fact it being sort of good to soft officially. Schalke's an interesting one, right at the bottom of the weights here. I thought the improvement that Rebecca Menzies' horse showed last time out when winning at Kelso was really quite stark. That's clearly a horse on good terms with himself. And interestingly as well, there's plenty of pace in this, and it really could tee up for a horse like him because he came from the back at Kelso and the race collapsed a little bit, but he stayed on and won very easily. So Schalke might get the run of the race. Loads of others to consider in here. I quite like Storm Nelson. Now, my kind of wrong price alarms going off with him a little bit. We've got at the top of the weights Flight Deck. He's around 6-1 for John Joe O'Neill and JP McManus. He's top weight. Now, if you look at Storm Nelson, he beat Flight Deck at Carlisle 2 starts ago. Now, they've both gone on and won subsequently. And Storm Nelson's only £1 worse off for beating him nearly 2 lengths. And he's about 16-1, whereas obviously John Joe's is much shorter. So I think that's a wrong price about Sandy Thompson's horse. Thompson, he's a dab hand, isn't he, with some of these older horses that he picks up from other yards, and I think he's got Storm Nelson in rattling good form. He's got a good chance.
Got a bit of video form, so apologies ahead for my pronunciation. Coquelicot, I'm going to go with. In action at Kempton, finishing second, up £1 for this, Matt. What do you make? How strong is this form? What sort of chance on Saturday.
Yeah, so Coquelicot's she's a mare, 7-year-old mare, and an improving horse this season. Definitely still on the up, I'd say, because she won her 2 previous starts at Ascot and Sandown, not bad races at all, and then came here to Kempton on the hat-trick just over Christmas and bumped into Glimpse of Gala, and Glimpse of Gala's the horse that won the Pertemps qualifier the other day, beating Ashdown Lad at Warwick. So this is really good form, and Glimpse of Gala won at Warwick off a higher mark. So you've got to think Coquelicot has got a good each-way chance, just off £1 higher. I mean, her sort of winning run started, she was rated 115, so it is a bit of another jumping class for her, and maybe she'll find something as equally well handicapped as Glimpse of Gala in this sort of field.
The bet is?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really good weekend for Sandy Thompson. I'm with Storm Nelson here. Look, a 10-year-old, still as one of those horses, 1-3-4, lingering around the kind of cut-off point for the Pertemps final itself. I think they'd love to get him in that race, and yeah, he's in really good form. The way he won at Kelso last time out, I think he'll absolutely relish this.
A couple of lines on the Dublin Racing Festival, Leopardstown, Saturday, Sunday. Can't wait. There's a couple of significant. It's dominated by Willie Mullins in terms of quality and quantity, but it's a huge weekend for Honeysuckle in the Irish Champion. That run in the Hatton's Grace, her first defeat, I mean, it wasn't, in terms of performance figures, wasn't as bad as people have made it out, but she needs to win or go very close against Stateman and Vauban in that. We've got Galopin des Champs, and on the face of it, it's got a straightforward task in the Irish Gold Cup, but the proof of the pudding is the 3 miles. It's a first test over fences at least at the trip for him, Matt. They're some of the sort of stories that are bubbling away. What's the one thing you're most looking forward to seeing at the DRF this weekend?
I mean, it's a brilliant question, Dave. Do you know what? The Irish Arkle is a race to savour. It really is. Now, whether I'll actually have a bet on the day is a different question. I've backed Banbridge for the Sporting Life Arkle at Cheltenham. The way that he jumped around Cheltenham on decent ground at the start of the season when he beat Tommy's Oscar. Now, if you look at Tommy's Oscar, he's come out, he's run really well. They pitched him into the fighting fifth hurdle against Constitution Hill, and he obviously struggled. But then he's come out and won the Lightning, hasn't he, at Doncaster just last weekend. I think it's really good form, and also good form is Banbridge's third at Fairyhouse. Now, obviously, he bumped into 2 real strong stayers that day, Mighty Potter, Gaillard du Menil, and it was 2 miles 5 on really quite taxing ground, and Banbridge, his jumping suffered for that. And I think getting back on a sound surface round Leopardstown with, I think you've got some real pace horses in here. Dysat Dynamo, I'd imagine El Fabiolo is going to be prominent as well. He could just tee up for a horse like Banbridge, and I'm really hoping that he might be one of the best of the Irish. Now, Appreciate It is standing in the way. I think he's going to be fairly well backed to Appreciate It. The Mullins camp are positive about him, but I'm not blown away by his jumping or Dysat Dynamo's. I just think they're a little bit scratchy, and if Banbridge can get into a good rhythm around Leopardstown, I'm hoping he can maybe upset the Mullins clean sweep, which has been talked about a bit this week.
I think if Willie wins the first on Saturday, there'll be a lot to talk about the potential clean sweep. That's one of his weaker races, if such a thing exists. But that's not your Saturday best bet. Your best bet. We're both heading to Scotland, fellas. Both heading to Musselburgh, yeah. Yeah,
I'm drawn into this the Edinburgh National. Now, this time last week I had sour grapes slightly, Dave, because I'd put up Doyen Breed for the Sky Bet Chase, and he wasn't declared. Now, I don't know why he wasn't declared, but I suspect they might be a bit happy with the slightly easier ground here up at Musselburgh. He's Sandy Thompson's. There's a running theme. There's a running theme this week. Thompson's in good form because Doyen Breed, he has some really good novice chase form from last season. He ran in the second in the Hampton. He was second in the Reynoldstown, both Grade 2s. He bumped into horses, good horses rated in the 140s, 150s now. And he comes here off a chase mark of 136. Clearly gives him a good chance of being competitive. He'd had wind surgery over the summer, and we hadn't seen him until the end of December, where he did run at Doncaster over hurdles, and it was a limp enough effort, but it looked like a little prep run to me before he went back over fences. The Sky Bet Chase plan blew up in my face, but I'm hoping to recoup those losses this weekend.
Second time lucky there for Matt with Doyen Breed. Earlier on the card, I like Halo des Obo, who forms part of the Paul Nicholls raiding party. He runs in the 128. It's a competitive Class 3 novice handicap chase, but he finished second to a horse called Tea for Free on his chasing debut at Newbury. The handicap has dropped him £1 for what was a really good run there. There's potential improvement to come. I think Musselburgh will suit. Bryony Frost rides in the Frodon Silks. I think he can get the Nicholls Scottish raiding party off to a flying start in the 128 at Musselburgh. Thanks to Matt. There's his thoughts on some of the feature action, domestic action this Saturday. What a wonderful weekend we've all got to look forward to.